Thank you. Welcome to the August 7th meeting of the P3 committee. The meeting will come to order. Do we have any members of the public present?
No.
Okay, thank you. All right. Let's go to items for discussion. Ordinance number 180, repeal.
Yeah, I think is Elizabeth, you can handle that there?
Yeah. Great.
Good morning, P3 committee. We're here to talk about repealing ordinance 180. We'd like to discuss a summary of the proposed changes, and then we're looking for your support taking this forward to the board for approval. So ordinance 180, which has been provided here with you, we've made proposed changes with track changes, so you can see what's changed from the current ordinance 180. And this ordinance is a reimbursement agreement policy. District has two types of reimbursement agreements. One kind is when a developer installs sewer or water to serve their project, and those new facilities cross other properties that benefits them. And when they connect, if the benefiting properties connect to those sewer or water in the future, we collect money for that connection and then give it to the developer that constructed those facilities. So that's one type of reimbursement agreement. And the second type is if a developer installs water or sewer facilities larger than what their development is needed. For example, let's say maybe a new subdivision going in might only need an 8-inch water line, but our master plan requires a 12-inch for ultimate development within our district. We would ask the developer to put in the larger water size with some district reimbursement to that developer for increasing the pipe size to accommodate ultimate development.
And just one clarification, it's not only developers, so some of these apply to individual homeowners that may be building property and need service and crossing. Typically, the upsizing doesn't, but where it crosses into properties.
Okay.
So
there's a couple changes we'd like to make to ordinance 180. If you may recall, we actually came to P3 committee last year on ordinance 180 to talk about in section 5, changing the reimbursement payback amount for the first type of agreement that we discussed, where developers installing facilities and future customers connect to it. We had talked about changing the reimbursement formula was originally based on engineering news record or ENR, and we discussed changing that to the consumer price index. So basically in that reimbursement agreement, at the time that it's executed, we execute the reimbursement agreement based on the construction costs. And then if a future customer connects to it later, we increase that currently based on the engineering news record index. We'd like to change it to the CPI. We feel like that the CPI index, well, the ENR varies more, labor materials vary more. So we feel like basing it on CPI would give a more appropriate index to base it on, so that the developer that constructed those facilities isn't getting paid too much or not enough.
yeah, so for example, if a homeowner or developer were to install something, and let's just keep the number simple, it's $100,000 reimbursement. And there's several properties, 10 properties that could benefit from it. And they depend on the way you do formula, they could get equivalent of $100,000 or their portion, let's say the $90,000 or $80,000 of the back. With the ENR, the engineering news record, that's actually the cost for constructing facilities. So it waivers based on gasoline price, oil prices, and waivers based on material shortages or contract labor shortages. While the CPI is an inflationary index, so it ensures that they're going to get whatever the equivalent dollar value is back over, I think, our 20 years. Thank you. It's a 20-year lifespan. So this way, there's no windfall to the homeowner or developer, but they also aren't on the short end of the stick if all of a sudden, let's say we hit a recession and the cost of construction goes way down. While the ENR, those fluctuations exist. So it wasn't very fair to the original project proponent, whether it be a developer or a homeowner, to keep it ENR. So that's why the CPI makes more sense to keep. The dollar reimbursement is still equivalent to the dollar today.
Sounds like this is a more stabilizing approach, or it provides less fluctuation, less variability.
It's a fairness approach, yes. So, and definitely it's less volatile.
Okay.
So we did talk about that when I brought this to P3 last year, and then we didn't move forward taking this to the board meeting because we don't get reimbursements coming through our development services group very often. But shortly after we came to P3 last year, we've actually had a couple of reimbursement agreements coming through our group. And with that, our current staff hasn't processed reimbursement agreements, so we've been reading through the ordinance, and then we've come up with a couple of other clarifications we'd like to request. Most significantly, besides the changing from ENR to CPI, we wanted to add some clarification about the two different types of reimbursements, because how we calculate the methodology for reimbursement is different. The first type of agreement we talked about, we're collecting funds from future customers when they connect, and we're giving those funds to the developer that reimbursed it. Now, for a project constructing facilities larger than they need, it's a reimbursement from the district directly, and that occurs right after construction is complete. There's not a 20-year time frame for reimbursement like with the payback agreements from other customers. So we added sections 8 through 10 just to talk about what the process looks like for a developer installing facilities larger than what's required to serve their development. And we thought that just really made the policy more clear for our customers and for our staff.
And just to add to, in practice, this is what the district has been doing for decades. But we realized it was never properly captured in the ordinance. So what you see down here in the ordinance is actually follows what the district staff has been practicing for developer reimbursements when we upsize a pipe based on our master plan criteria.
Thank you.
So
if they paid $100,000 to do a larger than necessary facility, they, after the construction is complete, they're reimbursed.
for the prorated person, so in other words, the way we look at it is,
So they use 60% of it, they get for 40,000.
it's a little bit more advantageous for the district and more fair for our ratepayers, actually, the way we do it, because no matter what, if they're gonna put an 8-inch pipe, they're gonna dig a trench, they're gonna put in the 8-inch pipe anyway, but there's a cost difference in material between 8 and the 12-inch. So we pay the material difference in 12-inch, please correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. I'm just going off memory of how we practice it. So that's really what we pay for, because it's the same trencher, the same excavator, the same material, same everything. Obviously on sewer is a little different, because when we go upsize in sewer, we also upsize the manhole. So then there's a difference in those manholes and the way we make them do it. And Elizabeth, please correct me if I'm wrong, because this is the way I remember it, is we'll make them on most jobs bid out the job both ways. And there's a delta, and that delta is what we reimburse.
Correct, yes.
So
And then
well,
we'll
still works.
yes, and then we execute that agreement after construction's done, and then we refund them.
Why wouldn't they just do the bigger one every time?
Well, no, we're making them we're making them award the bigger one, but we're making them bid it twice, so we have a competitive bid price for both. So we know that we're reimbursing the fair amount. Because if you just leave it for the developer to calculate, for magically, it's well, they want the district to reimburse most of it. Of course.
So just so I can review and summarize. Occasionally, we have a need to expand our capacity, and that requires new pipes. Sometimes it is, we foresee that there will be more expansion in the future. So we want to guard against having to do it twice. So we ask whomever is going to be putting in the pipe to plan as if the expansion is now. But for their purposes, they would only need, they would need to build a slightly smaller expansion. So then we calculate the difference, and in good faith, they say, okay, yeah, sure, we will pay that money. And then we refund the difference in what is actually needed at that point in time and what we anticipate future capacity needs to be.
Absolutely, and it comes out of our capacity funds, so not out of our user funds, because it's an expansion when we reimburse. And the original construction doesn't cost the district anything because it's required for the development. And so basically we end up getting, instead of having to come in 10 years, 15 years later, dig up the street.
To do it again, yeah.
Yeah, do it again. That's the purpose of it, exactly.
And even though it's called an agreement, the developer typically doesn't have a choice, right?
No, we condition it. So it's, they don't really agree to, it. We condition it that way, but the fairness of it is the reimbursement policy. And when the board gets the development contracts, the reimbursement, if there is one, which it doesn't happen that often, is in that development contract.
Mhm.
So,
Is this a standard practice that most agencies do?
yeah. When I was at Otay, we did something very similar. Helix and Padre, I know what's
Carlsbad and Encinitas, they do very similar.
Yeah, the difference is this, we practice it the correct way, we just never had it in writing.
Hasn't been codified. I
Yeah.
understand. Okay. That answers my question of why we're talking about this now. And it sounds to me like this is something that comes up rarely, but lately it's come up a couple of times. So there's a
Yeah.
need to have it in writing.
Yeah, interestingly enough, in the last year, we've had at least one reimbursement agreement for each type of these two agreements. And I mean, I know you've been here longer. How many reimbursements have we had in the last?
Well, there's been a lot, actually, almost half of San Juan Hills was built on some type of reimbursement agreement, all those tanks and pump stations, they're all upsized for future. Ranches to Soro, but in fairness, when we hit the recession, they all kind of disappeared. And then the first ones coming back after that was really Sunrise Oryx, which came to the board, and then now these. So since Elizabeth's been here, there was nothing, and all of a sudden now we have a rash, but these do come up in waves.
And if it makes it over 20 years, you're off the hook.
So for the upsizing, there is none of that, but yes, for the extension on your property line, so if you're a property owner here and a pipeline came across, you just have to wait 20 years. So. But it used to be 10 years, the board changed that policy back in the mid-2000s. 20 years to give more fairness.
Yeah, and there's some state law issues that require, you can't make it forever,
Yeah.
because you have to put a term to it.
So this sounds like a different issue than what we're actually talking about in the ordinance. Why would we limit people's ability to link into our system?
We don't, so if, for example, if you have a new homeowner or a developer that's building a facility here and they had to bring whatever water and sewer up the street,
Mhm.
and there's existing properties that could get benefit, but we're not nobody's forcing them to tie in, so that we don't force people to tie in. So at the time when they want to tie in, they had that ability. If there's a reimbursement area, because this developer built this pipe, so the portion of this pipe gave no benefit to the developer as far as in that section, except to obviously bring facilities to whatever was being developed
Mhm.
by the homeowner or developer. So when they decide to tie in, they're gonna pay back their fair share. It's gonna be inflated by the CPI, so this way a dollar remains a dollar. That's the intent of it.
Oh, okay.
The people there have a choice. So, for example, what usually happens with 90% of it is it's usually larger parcels, not all the time, and they want to subdivide.
Mhm.
And when they want to subdivide to, a lot of times in the county, is it 3 plus a remainder?
Mhm.
Yeah, so they get one larger parcel, they want to make at least 3 parcels out of it.
Mhm.
Now they need water and sewer
Mhm.
to service them. Well, if there's a pipe there, they're gonna have to end up paying their prorated share of whatever it would have been to build that pipe.
And if it's within that 20 years, that's what you're saying?
Yes, if
So
after the 20 years, they can still connect to the pipe.
does
but
it
they
have to be reevaluated again?
No, after 20 years, they connect to the pipe. It's just a normal district process.
No reimbursement?
No reimbursement to the original project proponent.
Regardless of when they connect, they would still pay their capacity fees,
Yeah.
but the reimbursement is just for the construction
Yeah.
costs.
I understand. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I was missing that point.
And is there like a part of the budget that highlights what we're on hook for reimbursement wise?
So if there's a project where the developers installing oversized facilities with district reimbursement, we develop a capital budget for that. So this year I actually put in for 2 capital budgets for 2 different agreements.
So we're expecting to have 2 of these types of agreements this year. And
Maybe
we've
this
already
year, yeah,
budgeted for it, for the reimbursement, the
Yes.
budget that we have includes the
Yes.
reimbursement.
Yes.
that we anticipate.
And just to be clear, a lot of those roll over because it's big, depending on the developer's time. So we put it in based on their best estimate. Most of the developers said it's gonna be done now,
Mhm.
and then it happens whenever it happens, so.
Yeah, with the pace of development, we typically have enough notice to go through the budgeting process.
Okay.
And is this automated? They just automatically qualify for it, or do they have to like?
No, we-
Send in for contacts, and send rebate in.
so it's a conversation up front.
Make a
before-
copy, fill out a form.
Yeah.
Or At the QR code.
Yeah.
Before we condition them, so that they're clear that they need to install facilities larger. And then, once we finish the plan check process and the construction agreement comes to the board for approval, we'll usually mention in that agreement that there's a reimbursement agreement anticipated for future board action. And then at the end of construction, we'll come back to the board for the actual execution of that reimbursement agreement, which outlines the costs of what the district's funding.
And a lot of those end up being on consent because it's pretty straightforward,
Yeah.
but obviously, if there's any one that you guys want to know, we can either. Put it on action over the whole, or bring it to a committee if you want to go over one of those as we execute it.
And who audits it to make sure that they've done what they've said they were going to
So
do?
there's a whole administrative record just to get to that portion, because it is a controlled process, starting with a water sewer study that identifies the facilities they have to build. A conditions letter that Elizabeth's group puts out. And then the whole bid process that actually is submitted to Elizabeth's group for review. Which does the audit on the actual payment, and then there's a whole invoicing process. That also goes to Elizabeth's group for review. And I'm maybe forgetting other review processes, but there's a lot of checks and balances. Before there's any reimbursement.
And our inspectors are verifying in the field that the correct size facilities
Okay.
are installed.
That's really what I wanted to know. Somebody had eyes on that.
Yes.
So if this process works well, developer pays $100,000. Of which they only needed 60%, $60,000 worth. The other 40,000 is in this undeveloped area or soon to be developed area. People develop it. Each of those 4 houses pay $10,000 each to the district. The district takes that $10,000, gives. At the time, $10,050 to
Yeah.
Lennar, whomever.
Correct.
Got it.
Yes.
Yeah, we do get reimbursed for our staff time. For doing that, so the project one knows that up front.
Yeah.
So they're getting a little bit less. Because we're administrating, making sure they get paid, making sure all the notices go out and following the statutes. So there's no ratepayer money being lost on that.
How do you anticipate what you will need? Like, how do you, Director Grosset's example, how do you anticipate that only 60% is needed, but you're asking them for another 40%? How do you anticipate
So
that?
that's exactly kind of the example I was going over. We do it based on capacity. So for example, we know that they have to put in an 8-inch pipe. So all the existing work of putting in an 8-inch pipe is on them. So, yeah. Digging the pipe, backfilling the pipe, the 8-inch pipe material. So then we look at what is the difference between, we're asking for a 12-inch pipe.
Was
But
your
that-
question, how did we know it'd be
How do you
needed
know?
for 12?
Yeah, how do you know about the 12 inch?
Okay,
That's
and
what I- yeah.
and then, sorry, I was gonna get to that too. So then the second part of it is, we know from our long-term master plan.
Based
So-
on the city?
Based on land use and growth, yes. So we know from our master plan documents what capacity needs are gonna be in that area. And then we evaluate every project that comes in that water sewer study that I was talking about. To look at how it affects our system, the existing system, and what we have theoretically planned in the ultimate. And once a project is triggered, we double check that against our master plan, because that is the Seekwood public approved document that has all that long range planning. And really, a lot of our infrastructure following this process is one of the reasons the district has been successful with having large amount of infrastructure needs that are basically taken care of through development without redoing it. It's that smart planning up front.
Mhm.
So the development services group ensures that looking at our master plan document, when a developer builds, what is the long-term vision of what the district needs, not just the developer's vision of what he or she needs. So.
Have we as an agency, have we ever gone back and compared and looked at the data showing, oh, we anticipated this, we did that reimbursement, and in fact, we were spot on. We did need that extra 40%.
Yeah, so we do that
Or-
every master plan cycle.
We go
But-
back and look at, and we can tell, oh, we anticipated 40%, but it hasn't borne out yet,
Yeah.
or we anticipated another 40%, and it's much bigger.
Yeah, we do that. We do that every master plan cycle, and the projects that come out of the master plan are exactly that. They're either we're not there yet, or we still have capacity left in this facility. But for example, we built that big 40 million gallon tank up there. We haven't reached capacity of that yet.
Okay.
And the new master plan, the current master plan shows that we still have capacity in it. And even if in the next couple of years we put forward a new master plan, it'll still show that we have capacity in our 40 million gallon tank that has not been realized. So we do that every master plan cycle. We look at existing facility demands, new projections, and figure it out facility by facility.
I don't think I have any other questions.
Last question for me is, did something inspire this? Was someone trying to take advantage of us on it?
No, so initially we came to P3 just to talk about changing from ANR to the CPI index,
Got it.
and then we had a
Just
couple.
cleaned it up after.
Yeah, and we had a couple of agreements come in shortly after that, and our current staff hasn't gone through the process of reimbursement agreements yet. So we've been reading this with a fine tooth comb and make sure we're following the process. We just found things that could have been more clear.
Yep.
So we thought we'd take an opportunity just to clarify that.
Just the two main points, CPI and then section 8.
Yes.
Yeah.
Clarification for oversized. So
Everything else is just setting up so to accept it.
Cool. Are you gonna give it a new ordinance number or is
It
it?
will,
Yeah.
yes. Once we get it onto a board agenda, I think Anthony will help me with that part.
Exciting.
And legal, we'll look at this too, right?
Yeah.
Just to make sure that everything is.
Yeah, all ordinances legal goes through before it goes, so. I don't know if legal's reviewed it already and they have initial, so they'll have
Yeah.
initial and there'll probably be some minor changes, but the. The main statutes, the main tenets of the ordinance will be exactly what we saw.
Okay,
Elizabeth, I may have missed it, but for the oversizing ones, is there a time element? How quickly do we have to reimburse the developer for the district share of the oversizing?
Yes, so I think within 30 days of construction completing, the developer's supposed to submit to us all of the.
I saw that in here. I didn't
Yes.
see how quickly do we have to write a check to them?
That is listed in the reimbursement agreement.
Oh,
I
okay.
believe we have 60 days.
From board acceptance, I believe.
Yes.
So after the board
So
accepts,
it's not in the ordinance, it'll
The
be in the
actual
agreement.
agreement.
is the reason why we have it as a two-step process, because oftentimes the reimbursement is over $50,000. Like, why does it show up as a separate action item to go forward with the reimbursement, even if we've already drawn that up into an agreement?
it's almost always over 50,000, yes, that's part of the reason, but also the. Normal contracts with developments don't have reimbursement agreements, so this one's almost like, here's our new standard. And the reimbursement's an add-on.
What's the most you've ever reimbursed?
Oh, gosh, Sandlot Hills. 1 point, I can't remember, it was over $1 million reimbursed, but let's split up between like 3 projects.
So it's 3 different developers split 1 point.
No, it's still Sandlot Hills, just 3 different projects. So we oversized the tank up by Double Peak, for example. The pipeline that goes up to it is 16 inches and the developer only needed 10 inch, I think. And then all 3 pump stations, we upsized a little bit because we have a storage shortage in Coronado Hills in the summer because of the avocado growers. So we built storage in San Luis Hills at the same elevation and increased the pipe to 16 inch. So we could utilize that, and then we had to increase the pump station. So obviously San Luis Hills didn't need to supply Coronado Hills, but the district needed it.
So those developers pass those costs on to the.
No, because they get reimbursed for that. In theory.
That's funny.
In theory.
Maybe.
But it was a cheaper way for the district to achieve its
Yeah.
needed.
At the end of the day, the developers.
Correlation between the
Yeah.
executive bonuses around that time.
Yeah, So, at the end of the day, the developers pay whatever, the developers will charge whatever the market bears. So, They'll be during the boom time, that's during the boom time, pre-recession, I'm sure the bonuses were fine.
That's always the fallacy. The development community will come in and say, if you just lower your fees, then we can sell houses cheaper. There's no correlation, right? It's whatever the market will bear, those make bigger profit and have bigger bonuses.
Yeah.
I'd like
Yeah,
to
that
see,
works.
I see, we'll cut our fees, I wanna see $20,000 off a house.
That's right.
I don't have any other questions.
Yeah, and we're just looking for support to take this to the board, because that's the next action, so
You have my support.
as well.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments or discussion about item number 1?
You're
Okay,
welcome to stay there, or you.
thank you for joining us today. Okay, item number 2, new board member handbook review.
Yeah, let's maybe walk you through where we're at and where we're going in this. So here's a physical copy of it, but our goal is that it's going to be a digital document. We don't expect the directors to be walking around with this all the time. The only difference between the title and this is this doesn't have the word new. This is really more for new board members. That's the purpose. It's an orientation document. That's the overall purpose. It's intended to be an orientation guide covering more of the administrative functions. Basically provides clarity on board member roles and duties, things like that. It does provide some general district information, and it's intended to be an online resource. That's what it is. What it isn't is it's not intended to be an all-encompassing manual. It's not supposed to cover everything that we do here at the district, right? It's not a technical reference, so it's not going to get into great detail about all the technical stuff that we do. That's not the intent of it. And it's not a substitute for other means to acquire knowledge, like going to the board meetings, going to committee meetings and conferences and seminars, meeting with the GM and other staff members. That'll be other ways to supplement a new board member's learning. So again, how it works, it's not intended to be a physical document. It's going to be electronic. We do have a physical manifestation here, and we can go through the agenda pretty quickly. We envision it being something that's going to be an online resource. We'll probably send the board members like an email that has this, and each one of those will be an active link. You click it, you go to it, and then staff's job will be to make sure that each of these are updated in the most recent version as active. We don't know if it's going to be like a SharePoint website. We haven't got into the details about how protected it needs to be. There's only one document in here that has some sensitive information. I can't remember the number, but it has like the board members' contact information, like number 14, if you look on the agenda, it has the board members' email and phone numbers. So we may or may not want the public to have the phone number you use. So we have to talk about the privacy and security settings in that. Let's see. So there may need to be some like companion documents for technical content. For example, we have strong relationships with both the County Water Authority and Sena Wastewater Authority. There's very little in here that talks about that. It references it, but it doesn't talk about our ownership and how we vote and all of that type of stuff. So we may need to beef that up, or it may be a companion document. It's a pretty broad document, covers a lot of things, but again, it's more administrative in nature. So we try to develop a document that provides the information a new board member would need in order to best perform their duties, but we had to balance that with, I'll say, the capacity to remember that stuff. We didn't want a document that was a foot tall, right? So it never intended to be fully comprehensive. So we can maybe walk through the handbook agenda, so you'll get a sense of what's in there, and then maybe get some feedback as to what did we miss? What would you wish that you have had? I know this has been on our agenda for a while. We've been busy doing other things. Clearly, we want to get this done before the next election, so that the next group of directors that come in have the benefit of this. So I think you have a copy of the agenda or the table of contents or the handbook in front of you. So we'll have the mission statement, we'll overview the management team, we'll have a work chart. You'll get some general facts and figures about the district, map of the voting division, so you know where you're at and who can vote for you. The board members do get insurance, so it has the insurance benefits that provided for the directors. Pay dates and holidays. We often get comments or questions from the board members about if I put in my reimbursement, what paycheck will be referenced in. So those are included in there. We do have a copy of the per diem monthly claim form. That's something, I think it's available online to you already, or maybe not. I don't know where you get the copies of the claim form, but it'll be, hopefully this will make it a bit easier. List of the board meeting dates for the current year, and again, something like that, that calendar would be updated every year, so that whenever you're clicking, you're getting the most recent information. Ordinance 221, we call it the business of the board. That's the one that talks about committee assignments and president, vice president, the duties and responsibilities. That's all in there. So you'll get a copy of that. That's probably the ordinance that gets updated the most in Vallecitos. And even since I've been here, I think this is its 5th version. Some of them are minor, some of them are fairly significant. It does include number 11 as a copy of the employee handbook. And the reason, so there's always this question, are board members employees? And technically you're not employees, but you receive some employee benefits. But there's some policies that talk about travel that pertain to the directors as well as staff. So that's why the employee handbook is in there, particularly as it relates to travel and conference attendance. Sample travel log, that's just what's the upcoming meetings and conferences. We'll give a sample of a board meeting and agenda and minutes, and just so a new board member knows what to expect, what does it look like? They may want to know before they go into the boardroom for the first time, what should I anticipate at a meeting? Number 14, I touched on that before. Contact information for the board members, including the committee assignments. We have a quarterly newsletter, so there'll be a copy of that. And again, as Chris puts out the quarterly newsletter, that's the Between the Pipes, then it'll automatically be updated, and the link will take you to the most recent version of that. And probably there may be a way to go back in time and review previous ones if a board member wanted to. We have an annual comprehensive financial report. The ACFR used to be called the CAFR, it's now the ACFR. Annual water quality report will be in there. We have urban water management plan, talks about the water situation here. And so 19 and 20, we have general overviews of the San Diego County Water Authority and Encina. Broad overview, not a lot of detailed information. So I'm curious to get your opinions as to whether more information should be provided in the handbook or maybe some other way. 21 is a very important document, the Brown Act. This is kind of the rules that you all have to play by, and we have to play in a public setting. CSDA does a good job. They have a handbook that talks about the Brown Act and kind of how it relates to you. The Brown Act itself is very long and cumbersome, but the CSDA says what's really important, particularly for a water district, a board member to know. You all have to do conflict of interest forms every year. That's a copy of that in there. The last two are very important documents. Copy a link to the strategic plan and the current year's tactical plan initiatives to support the strategic plan, and then a copy of the currently approved budget. One thing that's not on here that we may want to think about adding is like a training requirements. So all of you have training requirements. You have to get sexual harassment and those types of things. We can put that in there so that the board members know what they should be expected to attend.
I do agree with that. I think this is really comprehensive, and thank you. This is very, very comprehensive. I know that Ann and Anthony have worked really hard on this, so thank you. What I would also like to see is a calendar with just sort of general things that we do every year. Like, here's the budget season. You know, it's generally from January, we try to approve it in May or June. You know, something that
Audit season.
yes, the things that we encounter every year, and just kind of a general time frame, or maybe even just a list, just so that we are aware that these are things that are coming up. I think that would be really helpful.
Okay.
I'll probably add in like the employee appreciation lunch, which board
Yeah, all those
and
things.
those touch points in there too.
Yeah, and due dates for the training requirements might also be something good to add there, because if that's something that I never remember that. And I get an email and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I do need to do this. So having that just put into a time frame so that we are not scrambling.
Great ideas. The training can be problematic because sometimes it depends upon when you were brought in. You know, you have to get it within 6 months of when you're here, and then it has to be every 2 years after that. So it may depend on your election cycle, but we'll do the best that we can to put it there. Anthony and Ann developed something called the master board calendar. Is that what you call it?
That's board agenda.
Master board agenda. So it does exactly what you're talking about.
Oh,
It
great.
says over the course of the year, here's kind of the pattern, here's the rhythm. We
Great.
do budget here, we do the water quality report here. It's for our internal use to make sure we don't forget to put something on the board agenda. You would just like to have access to that, right? So
That'd be great.
you know what's coming in.
That'd probably be a dual purpose document, yeah.
Ours may have more detail than what I think you need, but let's use that as a basis to provide access. And again, you'll just click it, it'll take a link to it and you'll know what's coming.
That would be great.
So, yeah, we look at it from a new board member's perspective. It's drinking water from a fire hose, right? It's so much information. So we're trying to make sure it's pertinent, it's important, it helps them function early on. In their role as a board member, but it's never intended to be the Bible that tells everything that we do. So. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna work with staff and we'll make this available online, because I'd like to test, I don't want to give you paper copies of this, I'd like to test it in a virtual environment that we're heading towards.
Mhm.
So we'll make electronic versions of all these, get them linkable, send you a copy of this probably by email, play around with it, go through it, see if the kind of the totality is what you think should be there, and if you want to pick any item and look at it and see if it's got enough information and just give us feedback, that'd be helpful.
Cool. Two things. One, nothing I see on here about facilities, like, it'd be cool to have like a little map.
Okay.
a little Brief definition
That's a
of
good one.
what everything is. Maybe accompanied with the statement like intend to take a facilities tour of these.
Okay.
And then I also think that the board members' emails and phone numbers feels like it's a little out of place at 14, maybe put it at the start.
Yeah, we can do that.
Along with the Brown statement, do not contact.
Yeah.
Yes, board members. All at once. Big red. bold letters.
You not utilize the group Snapchat too.
Yes. It's amazing.
You always need the Brown Act front first.
Yeah.
Like, once I got appointed, I think I came to Glenn, I was like, hey, can I text everyone and say thank you? And like, it's a pleasure to be on the board, sir.
Yeah.
And that's like, no, you can't do that. It's like, that's my first instinct, like.
And if you do it, you're on your own. Yeah. It is, and a lot of that social media fights your nature. You want to reach out to people, but your role as board members is becoming restricted. Ability to do that. So I'll work with Dan and Anthony. We'll take your suggestions and we'll incorporate them, and we'll do some reordering of this to maybe give it some of the importance. And I wasn't looking at it from that perspective. I was looking, are they all in there? And then we can go through and make sure they're in a better order, probably. And we'll involve IT to get all this stuff and stored in the proper place. Anthony, anything that I missed that you want to?
No, it was right on. I think the intent is to totally go digital if we can, and work with Matthias to build out that portal. Just to make it easy as possible, the quick links at least bring you to the information you need.
Yeah,
That would be perfect.
Yeah.
and whether it's an app or just a.
Yeah, I would recommend Notion or Gitbook.io. Both are really easy to build wikis like this, and it's very intuitive for
It's called Getbook.
Gitbook.io, I think it is. And then Notion is Notion.com, I think.
Yeah, you've mentioned Notion before.
Both are great, and it's really easy to build out wikis, and you can privately protect them and stuff like that too. Make it organizational based.
Yeah. Yeah, most of the stuff is public information, so I'm not overly concerned. The only thing was the direct contact information. You would all like to know each other's phone numbers. Wouldn't necessarily want the
You
public.
can make that the one piece of paper you get.
It could be, yeah.
You know, something else that, I'm sorry, something else that I think would be interesting and important to have in here is boundaries around freedom of information. You know, I know that recently several of us, our utility bills were requested as a matter of public information, and I think that it's important, I think, for people to know what what that is and what the
Yeah.
boundaries are, and
What if I just opened myself up?
yes, I think
Yeah.
that that's important.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is probably something that even a prospective board member would have access to. They've declared their intent to run, but they're not a board member yet. They may want to know what are the rules I'm going to
Mhm.
sign up for.
And you know, what's accessible by email, you know, to the public, you know, what, and continuing in that vein, you know,
Yeah.
what emails, you know, if requested, to be turned over, things like that. I think that that's important too,
Yeah, we can do that. I'll work with the attorneys and get something about that.
because I don't even think that I don't even have a full understanding.
Yeah.
I was surprised that my utility bills would be,
Yeah, that's, that,
Requested.
recent?
yes,
I didn't get-
yeah, you weren't running for election.
See,
yeah, it's
Would
usually
you
that,
mind? You might
it's
get it.
usually that time of year.
Next year?
that's true.
Yeah.
I'm proud of my utility bills.
Slow.
My
Well,
ground lawn, my HOA is not very
Yeah,
happy about it.
That's what they'll look at. They'll look at your usage, not necessarily the amount, whether you're paying timely. They want to know how much water is this collector
Yeah.
using.
Cool.
They're gonna tell me how much water I can use. I'm gonna see how they're using.
Yeah.
water.
Yeah,
Good.
so I think that would be important too.
So, okay, so that's it. Like I said, I don't know, Anthony, how long do you think it'll take to get this in a kind of electronic linkable?
It shouldn't take long.
Okay.
Or with Matisse to see maybe they got the best platform,
Yeah.
maybe OneDrive or Teams right now, and then looking into
Sure.
it and that,
Yeah.
but we have this stuff already available.
Yeah.
It would just be links or external system that comes, so.
Right now, not all of it, but maybe about half this information is on our website.
Mhm.
And then the other half is obviously you need to create a link to other
Right.
websites. And then Matthias and I have been talking about different options, also making a board portal, a partition within our website. for
That's
example.
awesome. I'm a big fan. I've been talking about the board portal for.
Yeah.
for a while.
We're looking at, so this may start one way, and then as we add more, for example, policies and ordinances and procedures, we may. But that's all public access information anyway, that's on our website, so we'll see how it kind of evolves. So
Thank you.
Matthias has said there's flexibility in evolution, and we're looking to do those too, so.
I guess on that note, maybe a timeline associated, like in your first 6 weeks, you should have accomplished this and this, and in your, by month. Or
By 1 year, you should have been all this done.
something.
For the timeline for board members.
Thank you. And this was a lot of work. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, the two of you had very different experiences. Tiffany, you came in a COVID environment, so we were kind of limited what we could do. Eric, you didn't have the same restriction, but any thoughts either of you might have as to what's the best way to orient a new board member, not just a document? I'm not just gonna say, here's a link, figure it out yourself, but are there a series of meetings, tours, things like that that would, in retrospect or in hindsight, you said it would have been helpful if I'd gotten that in the first 2 weeks, not 2 years down the road.
Mm. I think this is a great start. I don't recall getting anything like this.
Yeah, we didn't have this developed. You and I, when we first met, we talked about a lot of these
Yeah.
things, but it wasn't in, you didn't have a nice thing to take home and.
Yeah.
And it's a fire hose. There's so many things and you forget some of the things that were discussed.
And I love the idea, when we were able to go on a tour, that was really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I mean, I know that there were extenuating circumstances with COVID that
Yeah.
prevented us from being able to do that. But I think recommending that any new board members spend time watching the videos that Chris and his team has put together.
Yeah.
I think that's really helpful. Meeting the staff is also really helpful.
Yeah.
Having like a, maybe like a welcome to the board lunch with top management is a good idea to just put names to faces.
Yeah.
Talk about, the business.
And we could even, under the org chart, maybe list, the work we do type videos. So this way, if one was interested, they can click on some of the work we do videos underneath the work org chart in that section. And go to, oh, this is what the collections crew does. This is what the.
I like that,
Yeah.
especially, for people that come from not anywhere even ancillary to water. I think that's a good idea to help explain.
And we already have those videos. It's just a matter of getting the link set up.
Mhm.
So,
Okay, so that's that one.
The only other thing I would add is just some sort of simple electronic input for all of the information, because I remember I filled out redundantly like 20 different pieces
Oh,
of paper that
okay.
probably at the time all went to Rondi anyways, and then she
Yeah.
manually inputs it into,
into our different systems.
yeah.
Like 3 different systems. That's for, I'm sure that was for like
Yeah,
insurance.
every-
So.
Yeah, it's the same thing when you're a new employee.
Yeah.
So,
I'm sure it will. Yeah. exude a more professional welcome for all your employees.
I know Denise is working on streamlining some of our processes for new hires and onboarding for new hires, which includes that, so. So as she goes through that process, that probably for board members will evolve the same way.
All right. Anything else on that?
Unless-
Okay, landscape workshops. Thank you for sitting through the meeting so far, Chris.
So we are in a series of workshops. We've had the first one, a series of 5 workshops hosted here at the district. They're on Wednesday evenings, the 2nd, 16th, 30th, September 13th and September 27th, like 3 hours in the evening, starting at 5:30 p.m. This really sort of came about. San Marcos Stormwater reached out to us, and they have a lot of dry weather flows, meaning they have irrigation runoff. They have data that they've collected from that, and they want to improve that. So they're working to do a better job at that. They had an event for kids that we attended over at Jack's Pond. It's fun, but this one's more like down to nitty gritty, actual hands-on skills being taught to actual homeowners. I didn't catch this at first, but it's the water authority that really is providing this. But behind the scenes is actually the county of San Diego. I think it's their big permit on stormwater runoff. The initial meetings implied we needed 30 people to have the class. And it sounds easy, but it's a whole nother ball of wax to actually have 30 people show up in the evening at night. But from what I've learned, I think the 30 people isn't really a minimum requirement. It's what they want to have, but the county wants to hold the classes even if there's one person there. It's part of their tasks to get this done. So we're partnering with obviously the city of San Marcos, San Diego County Water Authority, and behind the scenes a little bit the county of San Diego. So the first one we had, not a huge attendance. Some people that were on the roster didn't show, but then we had some people that weren't on the roster that did show. So maybe the Eventbrite thing is, tricky, or maybe people, decided to come at the last minute. It wasn't a super thrilling class. The first class in the series is on soil and site assessments, talking about how to, dig around in your soil and figure out whether you've got sand or clay, or what sort of amendments you need to make your soil better. Not the most stirring of topics for people. The second one on shaping your space on August 16th already has a larger attendance. I'm guessing that a lot of the people that came on August 2nd will attend this one as well. Yeah, if you come to all 5 of the workshops and you follow through with a few additional items, they'll actually give you a landscape architect to come out and talk to you about your property and meet you there and so forth, and give you some ideas. So we've done this before. We did this kind of before COVID. I think you've all met Eileen in engineering. I think at some point she retired, but she came back and is helping us out as a temporary employee. She took the class previously, and she actually redid her landscape. It's one of our little videos that we did, that Alicia did, of actually putting into practice what she learned from the specific event. So that's all I have on that, unless anybody has any questions.
Yeah, I walked down and sat for a few minutes. Yeah, Pinnock and I did. And it seemed like, I don't know, there were probably 15 people there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But not 30.
Not 30. It's 3 hours is a lot. That's a lot. And it's right over the dinner hour.
Yep.
And
They brought dinner, which
they
is
did.
nice.
They
Yeah.
did. I had some of the snacks.
Nice.
But yeah, I think this is just such a great program. Agreed that maybe, the lookbook of plants that was passed around was very interesting to people. People were spending like 2 or 3 minutes with it as they were looking. And, that's, to me, yes, soil and site assessments, that's a means to an end, and it's not the most interesting, but thinking about what plants could eventually go in there. So I don't know if there's gonna be opportunity for feedback, but sort of beginning with the end in mind and sort of like tantalizing people with, look at all these great plants, but you need to know if they're gonna live in your yard.
Right.
Like showing them the plants first and bringing examples or something like that. And then, yeah, but first we have to do this.
Right.
Because it was slow with the soil.
Right.
But
Here's some soil samples. Take a look.
but I think it's such a great program and I hope it's well attended and you know, the payoff and the incentive is great to have a free landscape architect. I mean, I just paid for somebody to give me a design and we're still revising it. So,
Right.
yeah. That's great. Thank you for putting this together and doing this. Do you know where people were from? Were they from San Marcos?
I didn't dial that in. It's allowed to be from anybody. I suspect they were mostly ours because I did ask people how long it took to get there,
Oh, yeah,
there
yeah, yeah.
to our location. And a lot of them up, I always do this where I point up the Twin Oaks Valley,
Mhm.
coming down. So not having to cross the 78.
Okay.
So, you know, maybe a little easier coming in that way than trying to come down San Marcos Boulevard and Twin Oaks. So,
After the board meeting, I was talking to the lady up front that was checking people in. I said, is everybody coming? Is everybody here already? And she said, no, she came from, I don't know where she came, but
she's
came
from
from-
Chula
yeah.
Vista.
The traffic was horrible getting here and there's 5 or 6 people that we know where they signed up from. They're probably gave up
Yeah,
because they're coming from the south.
yeah.
They
That's
probably
too
gave
bad.
up, but
Yeah.
I don't know how far south, but that's all she said.
5:30 is a tough time.
Yeah.
5:30,
Yeah.
enough time to be at San Marcos if you're down in San Diego or something, or down in La Mesa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's an hour
Yeah.
at least. Huh.
I don't know why I just thought of it, but maybe next time, or maybe if you're feeling good about it, advertising looks at nurseries, like there's so many little nice nurseries around. And
Yeah.
That's your audience. man.
I'm pretty sure that flyer, I don't. So when I came here, we stopped doing 3-fold brochures, but that's the city put this one together. I'm pretty sure they stuck it over at Green Thumb.
No, I saw it, that Green Thumb last week and I saw,
So,
but I didn't, it wasn't like common. I saw something that looked similar to this.
Yeah,
And at checkout.
You
It was
see
at
like
checkout.
one giant.
Yeah, it wasn't like a
Free landscaping event.
Yeah.
That's it.
the city made it.
Yeah.
You know.
Get a free landscape architect to design your landscape for free.
yeah.
That's it.
Did this go in the quail call, like San Marcos?
This did not get in quail call, but I'm pretty sure information on it was in quail call, so not this.
Mhm.
This is specifically the city's document,
Mhm.
but yeah, I'm pretty sure I got it in quail call.
Can you run it again? Because Lake San Marcos, and they've got lawns and they've got a lot of grass. in
Sure.
Lake San Marcos.
Sure,
Yeah,
I can.
yeah, I think the deadline for submissions is August.
Mid-month,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Chris does a great job working with other agencies to make our facility available, because we got a great location, beautiful facility.
Mhm.
And for North County, it's a great location. Let's see, you can get here without having to get on the freeway at times. So, yeah, kudos to you for offering our facility to be used by
Yes.
other agencies.
thank you.
Well, we have a good garden out front, and at some point, I know we're gonna go out there. And I also showed Michelle the employee garden. I was like, you know, we have this too, and it's kind of a different story, but you know, there's nothing wrong with people growing food on their property.
Yeah.
You know,
You guys should take a look at our
Oh, yeah.
employee garden.
Yeah.
It's
We're
unbelievable.
having a harvest event. I just talked to Ann Lopez when I was downstairs at my coming back from the meeting with Ops. Because the cucumbers are this big and the squash and the pumpkins this big already and the watermelons, there's 3 of them and.
That's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
Have you ever, Eric, have you ever seen the employee garden?
I saw it in disarray.
yeah, it was, right?
We got refreshed.
We had a little bit of a grant money left from the wellness grant, so we used it to put a little drip irrigation in, with just those timers that are battery operated. And that
Changed it around.
and then put new soil in and then bought some plants and then put soil in basically. I don't think it's not individual plots anymore, it's just an employee garden.
Community.
And then what we're having is we're gonna have a harvest event and then put everything out. The people who work the harvest event will get the first picks.
Oh, that's nice.
You need to serve the watermelon at the employee barbecue.
How about that too? Everything you have at the barbecue is grown on site.
Yeah.
Turns out things grow better if they get watered regularly.
Yeah.
You learn that from this experience.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's a little dense, because you know, when they got the plant was this big, so they plant one here and they plant another one here, and now the plant's this big.
And they're all
The other
growing
one's
good.
growing good, but
Corn's going.
you live and you learn, right? So as soon as they got planted, the ops guys did it, a lot of the collections guys actually that kind of they volunteered to do it. And one of the more avid gardeners like, oh, you guys are planting this way through, and they're like, well, we have all these plants, we're just planting them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, you'll go through that with your landscape design. You have to be careful not to put too much stuff in it. It looks great initially, but only 5 years down the road, it's gonna be
Yeah.
too
Yeah.
overgrown if you
Yeah.
get too aggressive.
I had that argument with my wife every time we go to Home Depot, bring them nursery for new plants. She's like, put one here, put one here. I'm like, they get this big.
Yes.
Mhm. Well, we are living through that with we have raised beds and we have tomatoes that are doing really well.
Yeah.
And they're giant.
They're
They're like,
huge. Yeah.
the plants are like this. And so we tied them up and we have to keep tying them up. and
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it is.
Only problem in San Luis Hills is everything is in rock, so it doesn't grow nearly as big as.
Yeah,
as
I
it
thought the
would.
raised beds are nice.
The
and
raised
they-
beds,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have to. Okay. Any other comments about the landscape workouts? Do we, this is relevant. Is there an ordinance for bees or chickens in San Marcos? Does anybody know?
I don't know what it is.
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
I can look into that if you want.
I know different HOAs have it, but I don't know if there's
Yeah.
a city.
I live in Vista and I can have the chickens,
Yeah.
How many do you have?
like about 19.
We have 19 chickens.
Two roosters, maybe a third one's a rooster. It's a young one, and I keep looking at it like I think that one's a rooster too.
Yeah. Huh.
But I got eggs. I have
Oh
eggs.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know I was gonna be a chicken farmer, but my daughter had a playhouse out on the Earth 40. And she's married, she's grown up, she's gone. Boys never played in it. And my wife one day said, why don't we turn that into a chicken coop? And I was like, okay, let's do that.
Awesome.
And then once you sort of start doing it, it's hard to stop.
Once you're a chicken guy. you're
Right,
a chicken guy.
right.
And Rodney had chickens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rodney loved her chickens a little more than I do.
Yeah.
She'd take them to the vet, I was like, chicken's dying, chicken's dying.
It's a great fertilizer for gardens.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Are you thinking about getting chicken? Are you thinking about it?
The chicken salad.
Yeah,
I get the chickens before.
yeah.
We, this is the story for another time, but we rented chickens in Pennsylvania.
Oh,
There's a company called rentthechicken.com. And you can dabble in chicken
Production.
owning.
Yeah.
Yes,
And then if you don't renew, they come take the chicken. away.
yeah, you come and get them.
Did they come with the coop and everything, or yeah?
Yeah, you come in the coop, a mobile coop that you can move around and 2 hens.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Maybe I
let
should
the
do
chicken, let the chicken.
Maybe you should start the franchise out here.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but my question is about, if we ever wanted to have, and this would be something that would be just sort of a nice to have, and work for somebody, is if we wanted to have bees or chickens. I was just wondering.
I think, I would really like to do the bees myself,
Yeah,
but my wife runs a daycare and I'm just going,
Yeah.
the liability on that one just doesn't pencil out.
Yeah.
So, but maybe when we retire, I might do
Yeah.
the beekeeping thing. But I have the feeling like here at the district, it's the same thing with the liability,
Yeah.
where it's like,
not a good-
there's probably not a good play out on that one.
Yeah, one employee with an allergic
Yeah,
reaction.
yeah.
Okay, all right, any other comments about? Okay, thank you. This is wonderful. I wish that I could attend these. I might.
Yeah, I
pop
wasn't
in.
trying to block anybody out.
Yeah.
I think I chose Wednesday nights. Partly because of what the instructor could do, because
Yeah.
they were teaching classes at Southwestern on
Mhm.
Tuesday, Thursday or something. And I didn't want to do Monday because it's tricky. And I didn't want to do Friday because nobody's gonna come. No.
Right. Okay, staffing update number 4.
You know,
This one's just me.
Okay, I was gonna
This is
say.
my staffing update. So Lisa had thumb surgery. Basically removing like a bone. And reroute the tendon. And so she was out. What's that?
It's very-
Yeah, and I guess it really was. And so she was out July, and I think she's gonna be out all of August too. So
Oh, boy.
if the social media stuff is looking a little ragged, it's because I'm covering and I'm not as good as she is. And I'm just gonna up and admit that.
Yeah, that's a lot that you're doing to cover for her.
Nice.
So she's on disability, so she can't work, right?
Correct.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Correct.
All right. Well, if you talk to her, convey our wishes for a speedy recovery.
I'll do that.
Thank you. Anything else? on
This
this
is one, so Lito, do you remember Lito, engineer? Lito left. He worked under Ryan. He left and we have an offer in with somebody. It's a lady I used to work with at San Diego Water District. So we're doing background checks. So if everything works out well, she should start. You may recall at the last board meeting, there was an item to authorize me to offer a salary at step D.
Yes.
Normally I'm
Mhm.
restricted. It's for her. It's
Okay.
that position.
So what level will she come in on?
Coming at D. Yeah,
Equity,
she'll-
sorry, that title is.
Yeah, it's basically what we call capital facilities engineer. It's our mid-level engineer. There's assistant and then really associate or capital facility and then senior.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
And she's been in San Diego for 14 years, I think, and she's just looking for something new, and she did well in the process, and
Okay, great.
hopefully in another month or so, she'll be on board.
yeah, we're excited, definitely excited to get help because that Ryan's group is putting out a lot of work and there's only two of them right now.
You could probably use somebody else to be on the wheelbarrow team as well, right?
Yeah. So we actually offered her a job back in 2019, but right when we made the offer, her father was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh.
So she wanted to stay home and take care of him, and being a new employee, she knew it'd be tougher to take time off work, so she had to pass on that opportunity, and then 4 years later, it's.
Mhm.
Hopefully she was still interested. So.
Okay. Well, good. Anything else on staffing?
Nope.
Okay, Water Academy on Thursday, November 2nd.
And that's the extent. of
That's
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I know that we have talked about splitting this into two, water and sanitation. And I can't remember where we landed. Is this water only or is this water and sanitation?
So I was still gonna do both. We really thought about doing it in the spring. And I'm concerned that
Well, we had such a wet spring this year that we didn't, winter into spring that we decided to punt on trying to schedule anything in the spring.
yeah,
So that's why it's gonna be both for this
Okay.
one. And then we still haven't worked through the logistics with staff and ops about the splitting, because even though it would be just the water guys for one, just the sewer guys for other, but there's still some overall site for both sides. And for here, getting the site ready, so there's some duplication of work, so we're
yeah.
still.
So Director Grosset, we do a water academy where we bring in local ratepayers and kind of give them a tour of the whole district. And it's a big event, but it's hard for people to have a full day off.
Right.
And
'Cause it starts like at 8 or 8:30.
yeah, we let them go about
4:30.
4:30. And it's a long day. A lot of them are dragging by the end of the day. A lot of them are seniors. I mean, it's just the reality of it, of who can attend the event.
Mhm.
But we've tried some things like Saturdays and things like that. And Saturdays doesn't help out much because parents got kid in a sport or something like that. So
That was one of the thoughts for splitting it into water and wastewater, is you can maybe reduce the time. You can make it a 6-hour event instead of an 8-hour event.
If I recall, we talked about this, and one of the takeaways that we had was maybe just going to 2 of the cooler facilities and skipping the rest of them, and
Yeah,
identified Double Peak is like impressive because you get the sites along with it. And then Meadowlark, because obviously the facility is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
In what it does.
yeah, that's our single best tour site, I think, in the Meadowlark.
So if there was perhaps the Express Water Academy, and might be a bigger way.
Yeah, so we haven't forgotten it. The fall event will be a combined event still, and then as we head in the spring, we'll retool and try to figure
Okay.
that out.
Okay,
It's a great event.
it brings a lot of people.
Yeah. Usually
50. -ish.
50, 60.
Yeah.
we usually
We
can
thought
fill
about
those.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
And then a lot of employees have to just drive district vehicles because the bus is full, which is fine. And it also works out well in case somebody needs a ride back.
Yeah,
Or like last time we.
last time, yeah.
Now we had a person that had an emergency, family emergency or something. so they
Yeah.
had to get back.
Pull the
Wife had
bus
to
over
go
to
to-
the side of the road
I've
and.
had to go to the emergency room.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we got blood drive coming up, so
Okay, good,
that one's in, what,
That'll be
next week, I
promoted.
think?
great. Okay, I'm not gonna take this, but I know you're gonna promote it, so, all right, thank you. Anything else on the Water Academy? Anything else? Okay. I have a question. Do we do any kind of survey, like a confidential survey for our employees to find out? Do we ask them things like, are you housing secure? And asking because, on the drive here, there's, I come up Vallecitos Road and there's always a lot of cars parked. Some of them look like cars that people are living in.
Yep.
And, my concern is that I know that these are good jobs. I know we pay our employees well. Sometimes people just have different and difficult circumstances, and I would not want any of our employees living in their car.
Yeah.
So do we ever do some kind of confidential survey to find out if folks are in dire straits?
No, we've never done anything like that. So the reason Chris was kind of chuckling, because just this morning we were talking about, I sent out the email to introduce the survey that we're doing. I think I mentioned it in the GM report last time. So tomorrow, Energage,
Yeah,
the firm we contracted with, they're going to be sending out the survey.
Mhm.
And I think it's a 2.5, 3 week long period that people can respond. And then we'll figure out what to do with the survey results, but it doesn't touch on anything like that. It's more about, are you satisfied? Are there things that we can do to make it better?
Okay. Not life circumstances, but kind of employee satisfaction.
It's more of that, so.
Okay. Another question that I have is, do we assess people's need for childcare? And is that something that we could start a dialogue on, perhaps having a benefit, perhaps contracting with a local preschool or something to try to make our workplace more inclusive. And childcare is a barrier to people working. So have we ever talked about that? Have we ever thought about that? Is that something that we can start talking about? I would really like to. And I think that, as we, I've said this a number of times, but as we have people retiring and we try to attract new people, we need to be able to attract them with things that matter to them, and childcare might be one of those things.
Yeah, we did have a conversation about that. Go ahead.
well, my wife runs a daycare, and what I'm thinking is there's certain entities that she has to interact with through local and at the state level and so forth. And I could get the list of licensed daycares in the area that we could just have as part of onboarding with staff. I mean,
Yeah.
just as, here's the local people. People like to either have their daycare near their house or near their work, it's
Right.
usually one or the other.
So
But I could certainly do that.
yeah,
Okay.
during the early stages of COVID, I had a conversation with Rondi. They said, hey, because a lot of the daycares were closed and employees were having problems when they finally were returning to work, but they couldn't have a place for their kids. We had talked about, should we open up a temporary daycare here, maybe use the training room? And we talked with Best and Krieger, and they said, stay away from that. That's a
Yeah,
bad idea. So
understood.
that's about as far as the conversation went, but it's more COVID focused. We didn't move forward, but I think offering, not maybe resources the wrong word, or at least recommendations. Here's some places that you can consider. We're not endorsing any of them.
Right.
We have to be very careful. We can't endorse everybody, but
Could we talk with JPIA and find out if there's a precedent set for offering an employee benefit, like almost like an HSA, but for daycare?
yeah.
I mean, that is attractive. That would attract people. Let's say if Vallecitos enabled employees to have, money taken out of their paycheck tax-free
Yeah.
to contribute towards daycare because it's expensive. Or, some kind of discount. I don't, it's not a fully formed thought.
So,
in my head,
so
but-
I got good news on that. So when I was having my children. We were going through different MOU and one of the things that I always wanted, we didn't get it in time for me. But it was a flexible spending account,
Mhm.
but the district now has a flexible spending account and because. What I wanted to do was put in the maximum in there to use it for daycare expenses.
Mhm.
I didn't get advantage of that, but a lot of the employees I know. They use that flexible spending account to offset their daycare expenses, so
Mhm.
money taken out pre-tax.
Mhm.
Flexible spending account that they use towards daycare expenses and like I said, Chris's wife runs a daycare and Dean Tote's wife runs a daycare, so I know a lot of the employees. On the ops side, some of them go to Dean Tote's wife for the daycare, so. But in general, yeah, it's definitely something that we have the ability to already, that we did not have that. I wonder, I don't remember when we get the flexible spending account, but it was maybe 8 years ago or so.
So, it was a year before I started, and it's not too late for you. I mean, you could be a dad at 50 if you wanna, you can take advantage of all those benefits.
Yeah, the other thing too is that I think the state recognizes these problems too, and so they've made initiatives for pre-K to be offered to all California citizens. All people who reside in California, and it's slowly coming down every year, so every year more kids get into it. Unfortunately, my kids are gonna miss that, but I believe by 2025, all the kids should be opted into this. So that's a huge relief, like we greatly could have benefited from that, but.
Yeah, and we can make sure that our HR department is aware of those types of programs and educate our employees. Just say it's not our program, but you may want to go look here.
Mhm.
But I like these flexible benefit, these programs that have tax advantages. Restricts on what you can spend it, but some people, that's what I want to spend it on. I want to spend it on daycare. So.
Yeah, I just think that it's something that is, that we should be aware of.
And now I just spend it on braces.
Yeah.
Yeah, we also could have greatly benefited from that.
Yeah.
I had 3 kids in daycare and I was working to pay their daycare.
That's my wife Melissa, she was working to pay the debt pretty much.
So back to the survey, I'm hopeful that maybe by the next policy committee, we'll have completed the survey and maybe got some preliminary results from Energage.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure, it's hard to tell what the next step is, because I don't know what the results are gonna be, but I'll get the management team together and we'll try to figure out if there's some commonality, some issues that need attention. There may be some follow-up surveys. If we didn't score too well in this particular area. But the survey, I saw the survey questions, they don't lend themselves well to knowing specifically what the issue is. So you may get a bad ranking in a particular area, but you don't get a lot of detailed information. How could we make it better?
Mhm.
But if one area is a sore thumb and you're really bad in that, then maybe we send out another follow-up survey, said, hey, we didn't score this well in this area. Can you give us more information?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to approach it. And, then we can, the next time we meet to talk about our strategic plan, which I'm not sure when that will be, so that.
Yeah.
This is also me asking when that might be, but we can look at those things and say, we need to improve our,
Yeah.
whatever it is, the environment or the policies or
Yeah.
reduce barriers or whatever it is, around whatever, if there is an area that is not optimally
Yeah.
scored.
So maybe we can, Anthony, if you can write down, add maybe a strategic plan to an upcoming policy and we can figure out the timing, because when we did this, and I forget the year that we adopted the strategic plan, it was intended to be about a 5-year document.
Mhm.
And at the end of that, going into that last year, we probably start the process again of refreshing it.
It was a COVID time.
It was
as well.
post-COVID
It
because.
was right at 2021.
We were wearing masks.
Yeah, we were good, but it wasn't all
Yeah.
isolation. We came out of isolation.
Right, so we still have a little bit of shelf life on the document, but we can start talking about that and what to do. And, every year we do the tactical plan, which is what are we gonna do this year in
Yes.
support of the strategic plan?
That's coming up.
So,
Speaking of strategic plans. Might be good to keep in the back of your head if there's a weird variance that comes up during winter time of how you're gonna handle COVID again.
yeah, are you hearing something or just?
Well, there's certainly been a resurgence of COVID
Yeah.
lately. personally know at least 3 people that have got it recently, no one in close connections, so don't worry, but I don't know, it just seems like we may be overdue for
Yeah.
another weird happening.
We spent a lot of time and money to deploy people home with investment in IT stuff, and we have procedures, so I think if we had to send people back, we could probably do it quicker and more efficiently than we did the first time.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's something for us to think about. I've heard the same thing, the numbers are ticking up percentage wise, but the numbers aren't huge, but it's
Yeah.
trending.
Yeah, and all still a very mild form of quick recovery and stuff like
Yeah.
that, thankfully, but like,
Yeah, my son's first job was a spaghetti factory, and somebody he worked with got COVID, and then we were at Disneyland when he got the call from spaghetti factory.
Mm.
and
Then we-
Disneyland had it. at
Yeah,
that
well,
time.
So we tested him, he's fine, and then he ended up getting sick, and then we tested him, he's fine.
Yeah,
So then we tested my daughter, my son, everybody tested negative. But for my birthday, we told him you need to stay in your room with a mask on, because he's the only one that's exposed. Uh, He didn't care, he just watched play video games all day.
Oh darn, I have to go to my room. It used to be meeting.
Right, back in the day.
Yeah. All right, well, I think that's it. We're adjourned, and thank you all for coming. Thank you for your input. And thank you for all of the work on the employee, I keep saying employee, the board member handbook.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, thank you.